Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the video notes for Section 4 of Chapter 1 of your Algebra 2 book from McGraw-Hill. This section is entitled Solving Absolute Value Equations. It will be a 3-video series of notes that will cover what is absolute value, how do I evaluate absolute value, and how do I solve absolute value equations. So our first video here is going to define absolute value. Absolute value is defined as the distance a number lies from 0 on the number line. In symbols, we have vertical bars. Okay, two things to remember about this. One, those vertical bars act like parentheses in terms of PEMDAS. So we do have to simplify inside those before we do any multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, or exponents. And the other thing is absolute value. Boy, it would help if I could spell. Absolute value is always positive. It is a distance. Distance cannot be negative. So keep those two things in mind as we work through this. Now what we're talking about here, let's say we had the absolute value of 4. 4 is located here at 4. 0 is where we're looking at our distance. This distance between 4 and 0 is 4 units. So the absolute value of 4 is 4. If we take the absolute value of a positive number, and it doesn't have to be a whole number, it could be a decimal or a fraction. If we take the absolute value of a rational number, it will not change. It does not affect positive numbers because positive numbers already represent their distance from 0. It's negative numbers that are affected. For instance, negative 4, which is located right there, that number is also 4 units away from 0. So the end result is that the absolute value of negative 4 is also 4. In other words, there are two numbers that are 4 units away from 0 on the number line, positive 4 and negative 4. So essentially what absolute value does is it removes the sign. Positive numbers don't get affected by this because you don't have to write the positive sign. Negative numbers, when you remove the sign, become positive. So, let's go through some examples of evaluating absolute value symbols. This is very similar to what we've done in previous lessons. We're going to take the end value that they give us and we're going to plug it into the equation. So we have 8.4, would help if I used the pen tool. 8.4 minus the absolute value of 2 times 7.5 plus 5. We're going to start by carrying out 2 times 7.5 because we're carrying out PEMDAS. That is 15 plus 5. Still inside those absolute value symbols. So we have 8.4 minus the absolute value of 15 plus 5. 15 plus 5 is 20. So we would do that part next, giving us 8.4 minus the absolute value of 20. That would be 8.4. I apologize. We need to start that problem over because 7.5 should be negative. So I've made a mistake here. This is negative 7.5. Let's back this up and fix this problem. Negative 7.5 getting plugged in there, which means this is negative 15, which makes this negative 10. There we go. Now we're back on track. So then we would take the absolute value of negative 10, which means that we would remove that negative sign. This negative 10 becomes positive 10. Then we subtract. 8.4 minus 10 is negative 1.6. Let's do another one and see if we can keep from screwing up. Negative 2 for x is going to go in for x. So we have the absolute value of 4 times negative 2 plus 3 minus 7/2. So that would be 4 times negative 2, which is negative 8, plus 3, inside our absolute value symbols. Then we're going to subtract 7/2 from that. That would be the absolute value of negative 5 minus 7/2. The absolute value of negative 5 is 5 minus 7/2. 5 is 10/2 minus 7/2, so I have to get a common denominator, would equal 3/2. One more, and then we'll call it a video. We're going to plug negative 2/3 in for y. So we have 4/3 minus the absolute value of 2 times negative 2/3 plus 1. 2 times negative 2/3 is negative 4/3, so 4/3 minus negative 4/3 plus 1. Negative 4/3 plus 1 would be next, so we'd have 4/3 minus the absolute value of negative 4/3 plus 1, which is negative 1/3, which would be 4/3 minus 1/3, which is 3/3, meaning our answer is 1. In our next video, we will start to talk about solving absolute value equations.